we get into the Schofield Bible, Pox. What do you know about it?
Well, the Schofield Bible, it's just totally irrelevant. It's another cope. So I, as someone who is half Italian, am well familiar with Catholicism. All my Italian family are Catholics. Every time I go to Italy, it's Catholicism everywhere, okay? And my uncle is very devout Catholic, and a very good man. But when my father came to America, and he stayed in America, he married my Irish American mother. For some reason, they started going to an evangelical church. And it's the evangelicals who are said to use this Schofield Bible, that the Schofield Bible is this American invention particular to the evangelical movement in the United States. I can tell you that as someone who grew up not only in an evangelical church, but was also sent to an evangelical private school at one point in my life, I have never seen a Schofield Bible in my life. I've never seen an evangelical Christian carry a Schofield Bible. I've never seen anyone read from a Schofield Bible. I've never seen one in my life. This notion that Christian Zionism, and there are way more Christian Zionists than there are even Jewish Zionists, okay? So again, this idea that the Jews hate Christianity, they hate Christ, they believe that he's in a big bowl of boiling human fluids. It's just cope, it's just nonsense, it's misunderstanding of so much. The Jews, the Jewish people, the rabbis, they don't really mind Christianity. In fact, they see it as having done wonders because it conquered pantheism, it conquered idol worshippers, it conquered pagans and paganism. It brought the Torah everywhere, it brought the Messiah everywhere, and it brought the idea of the Jews as a chosen people everywhere. And Christians really believe this. And there are more Christians who believe this and live by this and act this out than there are Jews who are Zionists. This idea that Christian Zionism comes from the Schofield Bible is cope. The idea that the Jews are the chosen people, that Israel is their promised land, it comes from the Torah. It comes from the entire Old Testament. And you don't need a Schofield Bible to have devised this. So it's just a nonsense. There's nothing more to say about it. It's irrelevant.
Okay, so I'll move on very quickly to just something that I was thinking about before I came on for this recording. And I was wondering how the Catholic Church operated through this scamdemic. And I was thinking about the holy water, the fonts, and it's considered very sacred that you bless yourself with the holy water when you enter the church, and then when you leave the church, you bless yourself again with the holy water. And I started looking up different links, and I discovered that in many parts of the world they drained the fonts of holy water because they were terrified that the holy water could give someone COVID. And we saw lots of stupid photos during the scamdemic. I think there was a priest in America who was baptizing a child with a water gun, super soaker or something like that.
Yeah,
so I'm just gonna very quickly go through this. And this is from cbcew.org.uk. And this is the Catholic Church, England and Wales. And it says acts of worship. And it talks about COVID-19. It says the main mitigation against serious health issues arising from COVID infection is to be fully vaccinated. This means 2 doses plus a booster for anyone aged 16 or over. the vaccine program in England and Wales has had a major impact in reducing death and serious illness from infection with COVID-19. The Church in England and Wales supports the vaccination program and encourages people to be vaccinated. So I thought that was rather interesting. And I'm just looking here. This was dated, so it's the 24th of January 2022. So it's coming up to close to 2 years into the scamdemic. It was updated 4 days later. Reverend Canon Christopher Thomas, General Secretary, CBCEW. And there was another one here, and this is the National Catholic Register. And it says, across the globe, Catholic churches have emptied holy water fonts in an effort to stall the spread of coronavirus, or COVID-19 as it's officially known. From India to the UK, the US, and even to Rome, dioceses are opting for this measure of precaution. Even the healing pools at Lourdes have been temporarily closed. It says, I'm not a scientist or health professional, so I won't attempt to evaluate such decisions. So I just thought this was quite fascinating because, you know, if you're a believer, you know, the idea of blessing yourself with holy water is fundamental to going into the church and going to mass. And they could take away that. And how does the Catholic Church respond? You know, it's for the best. It's for the best. You know, as you said, Pox, it's a very flexible religion. It's very
you know, and we're supposed to, apparently, you know, the victory is already won. The victory was won on Calvary Hill at the crucifixion, and so therefore we should, you know, just grit our teeth and bear all of these insults and injuries. But apparently some pissing little virus is not within the victory. That can actually do you harm. So let's close the churches and drain the wells and drain the fonts, you know, keep a distance, because that's beyond God's power. That's beyond God's victory. I mean, what do these people actually believe? But of course, this is the problem. And again, steel manning the Christian argument. They will say that, you know, human institutions, just like humans themselves, are fallible. So just because the Catholic Church supports these immigration NGOs or these COVID restriction measures doesn't mean that that's what genuine Christian teaching would require or would compel one to do. And that's fine for Christians to say that, but again, you know, Christians are the ones that make these big claims of infallibility, and the Pope is the representative of Christ on earth. He also is infallible. Although, did Vatican II kind of demote the Pope's level of infallibility? I don't remember. Perhaps that was a part of Vatican II, but in any sense, he was considered infallible for much of Catholic history. The Pope was the infallible representative of Christ on earth. You know, he has the keys of Saint Peter. He's the big guy. So, you know, if he tells you to do something, you do it. That's not just him telling you. That's God telling you to do it through the Pope. He's God's spokesman. So, you know, yeah, when the Pope makes claims about taking in migrants or do this because of COVID, you know, it's for the Catholics, it's certainly a big deal. And for those of us who are seeing through this scam and sham and seeing the dangers of it, it poses quite a problem, doesn't it?
I want to get back to something you talked about earlier, and that is how, you know, Christianity changed practically all of European culture or cultures, and it seemed to get its tentacles into absolutely everything. And there is this notion that before year zero, Europeans were just monkeys. They were just like a troop of baboons. Yeah. And I'm sure you've heard, Pox, you know, some of these Catholic fundamentalists talking about how Germans, before they got baptized, they were just chasing pigs through the forest. That was really
that's
all
the E.
they
Michael
could do.
Jones line that
Right.
many of his acolytes have adopted.
Right.
Well, what do you
So
think? What you surely
I find
must.
it very insulting that
Yeah,
I
yeah.
find it very insulting because the majority of my ancestors wouldn't have been Christians, you know. So you're running down the majority of my ancestors. So I do find it an insult, to be an insult.
Yeah. Well,
And
there's a lot you've said there that's interesting in that. Well, yes. So first of all, this claim. This is a claim that, again, the Christians who think that our problem today is because we have less Christianity. We don't have enough. We need to go back to some form of it that they believe is superior. And they have nothing to say about the fact that the Christian churches are festooned with rainbow flags, and that as I mentioned earlier, that Christian organizations, including the Catholic Church itself and the Protestant ones, are heavily involved in ferrying third world peoples into our countries. They have nothing to say about this. They just think that if we spam enough, Reconquista memes and Crusader memes and Templar memes, that will save Western civilization. And they will occasionally, when someone objects to this, or just by themselves when they're patting themselves on the back, they will make the claim that it's because of Christianity that Europeans achieved such heights of civilization. It's because of Christianity that white people, that Western kind, reached such great heights. They see Christianity as this civilizational forging force, and that before Christianity, as you quoted there, as you paraphrased E. Michael Jones, our ancestors were just running naked through the forest, chasing pigs and shit. Well, if that's true, how do you explain Haiti, which is majority Christian? How do you explain all these sub-Saharan African countries, which are majority Christian? How do you explain the incomparable glory of Rome, which was not Christian? What do you say about the Germanic and Gallic and Celtic tribes who had highly functional civilizations, highly advanced? You look at the metalwork, you look at their moral codes, you look at their organization, social organization, all of it pre-Christian, all of it in many ways superior to the Hebraic, Middle Eastern social organizations of which Christianity is derivative. It's an insult. And again, it is a symptom, it is a sign of the mental and spiritual capture that Christianity represents. The fact, and I already quoted Ravage earlier, but the fact that a foreign people spread through their their dried up desert home, spread their ideology through the Roman Empire, like the woke movement today, through resentment of the lower classes, and then wormed their way into power, and then through the Roman Empire spread this cult of Christ and this ideology of resentment and of the supremacy of the Jewish peoples and the Messiah and all the end times prophecy and all this, and spread that through the empire, often violently and subversively. And then thousands of years later, we would be disparaging our own ancestors as dumb retards who didn't know right from wrong until the Jews came and told us how to live. The Jews and their friends, the Jewish missionaries and their convert friends. Think of what that does to a people. That you would be reduced to believing that before the Red Sea pedestrians walked over and told you right from wrong, your ancestors were just dumb, immoral people. I can't let that sink in enough. This is a bacterial infection of the soul. And it explains So much. Maybe people won't have an idea of what I'm talking about. Maybe you have to be a sensitive young man to understand what I'm trying to say here. Maybe I'm not conveying it properly. Maybe you need to be a bit esoteric. But think about that, though. Think about what that does to a collective when you have just generation after generation after generation of this tension between what you were, what you're told about what you were, what you are now, and where that comes from, what the priests tell you, what the Bible tells you, and there's all this tension and conflict. And then on top of it all, you are degraded and you are insulted and you are told that everything about you is basically wrong. And we're not even talking about the doctrine of original sin. We haven't even touched upon the fact that you're taught that because Adam and Eve were deceived, it wasn't even their fault. It was that they were deceived, tricked into eating fruit that would grant them knowledge, by the way, knowledge, which our pre-Christian ancestors pursued. Philosophy, what does that mean? Love of wisdom. Our pre-Christian ancestors pursued knowledge. They pursued wisdom. They cherished it. They prized it. And in the Bible story, we're punished. Yahweh punishes us because Adam and Eve sought wisdom from the tree of knowledge. And they didn't even seek it out. They were tricked. And this is all God's plan, by the way. God knew this was going to happen because he knows everything. He planned this all out. But even still, he deems fit to then not only punish Adam and Eve, but everyone else for all time. For all time, we are punished. We are born into sin. We have to atone for the sin of these mythical people from time forgotten because they ate a fruit that would give them knowledge. And we're not even talking about that. We're just talking about that we're taught that our people were wrong. Demon worshippers, child sacrificers, human sacrificers, cannibals, running naked through the forest, couldn't build a civilization until this Judaic offshoot cult spread through Red Sea pedestrians and their convert friends to the corners of our countries. And then we did convert and we set about killing each other for not converting to the right version of this Judaic offshoot religion. That's how we spent the next 1,000 years. I mean, this is why the white race is in such dire straits. It really is.
When I was about 9 or 10 in school, we used to do the Irish myths and legends. And it seemed that in almost every one of those legends, you had a Christian deus ex machina coming on the scene, St. Patrick, who would give the Irish warrior his last rites or baptize him or whatever. And I always thought it was very strange because it was the coming together of two completely different worlds. And you had, I think, if memory serves me correctly, you had King Conor MacNassa, and when he had something in his head, I don't know, was it a piece of metal in his head, and they couldn't get it out, and he found out in his final moments, he was told that there was a guy far away called Jesus who was going to be crucified, and he went to try and get there to save him, but he died before he could get there. And then you had Fionn McCool, who went off with Niamh Kinore. They went off to Tir na Og, and he was there for, it's usually like 700 years or something. He comes back not knowing that 700 years have passed. And he's told not to put his foot on the turf of Ireland or he'll become very, very old. And he tries to help these two guys with a rock, and he moves on his horse, but he falls off. He falls off the saddle, and he immediately becomes old. And who rocks up at the very end to give him his last rites? St. Patrick. So then you had the Children of Lir, a story of kids who have an evil stepmother, and she's very jealous that their biological father loves them so much. He loves his kids more than he loves her. So she turns them into swans, and they're banished, and they spend 300 years on Loch something, and 300 years on Loch something, and I think 300 years in the North Sea. And then when they come back, they turn back into human shape, and before they die, they get baptized. So I always felt shortchanged with those Irish myths and legends, and I think this is what happens when a part of your culture is taken over by another ideology or whatever. It cannot accommodate whatever the endings were to those legends. We'll never know. They're lost because the endings were changed. So yeah,
it's funny when I was
ahead,
a kid, I loved medieval and ancient history, and I still do. And I remember as a kid, and it was inexplicable to me then, but I suppose now I understand what was happening inside me. But when I was a young boy and I would read these stories, or I would seek out. I was sort of like a self-taught kid in a way. Like I would just learn the stuff. If something inflamed my imagination, I would just pursue it autistically and try and learn everything I could about it. And every time, as the medieval era begins and antiquity ends, every time that some chieftain or king would convert to Christianity, my heart would sink a little. I'd feel like, oh, now things are going to get, this is where the story gets boring. This is where the story gets just all these Christian zealots just come onto the stage. Like when Clovis, the Frankish king Clovis, converts to Christianity, or the Charlemagne and his Christian zealot zeal, and all just the arrival of Christianity. There was some feeling inside me of just, well, this is where the story gets less interesting. This is where the history of the European peoples just becomes completely dominated with by Christianity. Just everything, as you said, Christianity just found a way to impose itself on every aspect of life. And now the major thread of history of the story is the Crusades. It's this war in the desert. I never considered the Holy Land very holy at all. I could never even, like, why? I would always, even as a kid, hearing the Bible stories, why do people care so much about the desert? It's like, and I've never been to these places. They have no connection to me. I don't care. And even as a kid, I felt this. I couldn't explain why, but now I understand it. And then when you add to that, adults, preachers, priests, Christian quote unquote scholars, Christian zealots, radicals, what have you, telling you that the Romans were demon worshippers, the Franks and the Gauls and the Celts and the Gaels, they were all just demon worshippers. They were worshiping demons, and St. Patrick came and drove out the demon worshippers, the Druids, demons, demon worshippers. I mean, it just, I think inside I was throwing up my hands and saying, enough. I don't believe you. I don't believe that everyone in the entire world was worshiping demons and killing babies and knowing all this stuff, and had no sense of right and wrong, except for this group of people who actually, if according to the stories you're telling me in this book, were doing horrible things themselves. Horrible things. So I don't buy it. And I felt that way ever since I was a kid.
All right, so I'll go on. I'll just read out these 3 tweets from the Pope, and yeah, it more or less ties up what we've been saying, especially what we said at the start of this recording. So his first one: so many people spend their lives accumulating possessions, concerned only about their own well-being and not the good they can do. Yet our life is empty when it is centered on our own needs, and we blind ourselves to the needs of others. #World Homeless Day. Okay, now, obviously, I agree with some parts of that. I'm not completely against it, but it's the idea
that's
of
the problem with Christian
embracing
teaching.
poverty, Sorry, go ahead.
That's the problem with Christian teaching, is that there's parts of it that are entirely agreeable. but also
Yeah.
not exclusive to Christianity, mind you, not
Of
exclusive
course,
to
yeah.
Christianity. But then it always comes wrapped in this other crap, you know.
Yeah.
Because he's right. If you a great way to, you know, get over depression or get out of a rut is to do kind deeds for others, is to get out of your own head and, you know, be with other people and do things for them, do things that make them feel well, because then you'll feel good too. And even the most misanthropic person from time to time needs to feel the pleasure of good company, of doing something good for someone, or someone doing something good for him. And so that's entirely true and fine. But then it always comes wrapped up in, like you said, this veneration of poverty.
Yeah. Just to say as well that when I was a kid and St. Patrick kept appearing in all these different legends, I started thinking that maybe St. Patrick had a DeLorean time machine. You know, he was able to he was able to go to different eras, you know, thousands of years apart, and just show up and turn the warrior into a Christian. Okay, the next one. The hashtag death penalty is always inadmissible because it attacks the inviolability and dignity of the person. I appeal for its abolition in all countries of the world. We must not forget that a person can repent and change even up until the very last moment of their life.
Yeah.
Okay, we've already gone through that. Yeah.
Well, I would like to say one thing on this
Go
too.
ahead.
And it kind of ties back to that thing, and I'll probably conclude on this because I do want to really drive this point home. But the Christians who will say, you know, well, you reject Christ, your funeral, basically, your soul's funeral, you're going to hell. So according to the Christians who think that they have supremacy on morality, they've got right and wrong sussed out. And before Christianity, we had no idea what we were doing. It was all just immorality, debauchery, you know, naked pagans having orgies and killing babies and drinking their blood or something. I really don't know what these Christians have in mind. And a lot of that also is Jewish. Talk about Jewish Jews hating a particular religion. You know, actually read what Jews have to say about the pre-Christian European peoples, and you'll find a lot of unpleasant things. And you'll see a lot of gloating, actually, from Jews, gloating about how the offshoot Judaic religion, Judaism 2.0, totally conquered the pre-Christian European ethno-faiths and destroyed them. But in any case, so the Christians, this is their morality. This is their worldview. A man who is a serial killer of children, a child killer, on his deathbed can say the magic words, accept Jesus as his Lord and Savior and the one true God, ask forgiveness for his sins, and he will go to paradise. He will go to heaven. But the Tibetan Buddhist monk living in a temple in the mountains who devotes his life to meditation and doing no harm to any living thing, who if he sees a caterpillar turned over on its back, will bend down and put the caterpillar on its feet and help it on its way. That man dies and will go to hell because he's not a Christian. He didn't say the magic words. He didn't repent of his sins. He didn't accept Jesus Christ and Yahweh as one and the same, but also the one true God. That's what Christians believe. And they can say, well, no, they go somewhere else. They go to purgatory, or they go somewhere else. They go to where all the millions and millions and millions of people who lived before Yeshua ben David, the God-man, came to earth as Yahweh in man form, as the Messiah. All the people who lived before him, who never got a chance to convert or to proclaim him as the one true God, they don't go to hell because they didn't at least deny him. You go to hell if you deny Christ. Okay, but in 2024, in current year, Tibetan monks know about Jesus Christ. Everyone knows about Jesus Christ. He's the most famous person in the world. And they don't convert to Christianity. They remain Buddhist monks. So they will die and go to hell, according to Christian doctrine. But the rapist, murderer who converts on his deathbed will go to heaven. And this is, I'm told, the superior moral worldview by which we all must live. Again, I'm not buying it. I'm not buying it. And what's really annoying too is seeing, because we live in the internet age, we live in the meme age, so many Christians, it's become this thing now where people on the right, people on the conservative right, are trying to retcon the recent past. And they're trying to, and they've been relatively successful in this, they're trying to reduce atheists to fedora tipping Reddit tier losers that got completely destroyed by based trad, chad, gigachad Catholics or Christians. That's not what happened. When the new atheists came about, they mopped the floor with the Christians they debated, the pastors, the theologians, etc. Every debate between a theologian and Richard Dawkins or Christopher Hitchens was an embarrassment for the Christian theologian. Dawkins and Hitchens and the other ones wiped the floor with these people. And now we have these Christians coping when you present these flaws, noticeable flaws, which, by the way, everyone has been wrestling with since the dawn of Christianity. You know, Augustine wrestles with these questions, the questions of good and evil, things like that. But now to see all these Christians just saying, oh, take your fedora Reddit tier atheism somewhere else, as if that's how you win the argument, or as if that's how you've won the argument. Sorry, no, you don't get to wave away this question with internet speak and memes. And if that's all you've got, you've lost. So explain to me then, crusaders, why the child rapist murderer who says the magic words on his deathbed gets to go to heaven, but the peaceful meditating Tibetan monk dies and will go to hell for not having recognized Christ as the one true God. Because that's what you believe.
The last tweet is, let us pray the #rosary daily, entrusting ourselves confidently into the hands of Mary. We entrust to her the sufferings and desire for peace of people suffering because of war, especially martyred Ukraine, Palestine, Israel, Lebanon, Myanmar, and Sudan. So again, it's the idea of
Israel
this
was included
one
in the
world
martyred?
religion. Yeah, go ahead.
Israel, he included Israel? I didn't see that tweet. Israel was included in the martyred?
It was, yeah.
Wow.
Ukraine, Palestine, Israel, Lebanon, Myanmar, and Sudan. Yeah.
So the ones flattening buildings and killing children are also included in the people being slaughtered, in the ones living in those flattened buildings. Oh my gosh, that's awful.
Yeah. It seems strange as well, you know, to see #rosary. You know, it kind of.
Oh yeah, yeah.
It just seems weird. It just seems weird.
No, this is the problem that the Catholic Church has tried to modernize, and that's why they've lost so many of their flock. There's an old Federico Fellini film. I think it's called Rome. But there's this scene where some cardinals are speaking, and one says something. I'm paraphrasing here, but he says something like, "The Catholic Church isn't supposed to become like the world. The world is supposed to become like the Catholic Church." And today's Catholic Church just seems to have completely forgotten that, and they've become very much like the world. But that's not really what Catholics wanted or want to this day. If the Catholics want to see revival, they should, you know, go back to their traditions and stop trying to be cool and modern and hip with, you know, #rosary. Because you're right, that does seem a bit odd. It doesn't seem right.
Yeah. It's as if there's nothing sacred at all, really.
Well,
they don't
right,
really
yeah,
believe in
yeah.
anything. And even the idea, I think I've spoken about this before, but like in a lot of funerals now, the church, they have cameras set up, so they actually stream funerals. They've been doing that for the last number of years, and I just find it appalling that you would stream a funeral. And I know people
Yeah.
find it useful. They're living in other countries and they can't be at the funeral, etc. But I still find it appalling that
Yeah.
it's kind of beamed out to the world, a funeral of someone. Could be some
Yeah.
average guy, you know. Suddenly it's on the internet. So, right, we're going to sum up now, and I will just say that, yeah, that last tweet from the Pope there. Recently, I was walking down the street, and this was in the middle of the day, and I saw that the street had been cordoned off. There was a police car with the sirens flashing, and on the street you had about 50. They were mostly women, also a few side-bys. They were wearing white t-shirts. They were all wearing matching white t-shirts, and they were lying down on the road. And it was some sort of demo that was connected to what's going on in the Middle East. And I was thinking that it's possible that, you know, a large percentage of these students probably wouldn't be able to pick out Lebanon or Palestine on a map. They would probably point in the middle of Africa or in the middle of South America. I get the feeling that many of them wouldn't even know anything about the country for which they were now, you know, lying down on their bellies on the street. So, yeah, right. Yeah, I'll just say then, Pox, we'll sum this up by talking about solutions as well, because I do hear there are a lot of people now in these circles, and they're talking about paganism. Now, I haven't really bought into it at all. I think if you're going to create some sort of religion, you need a bit of cohesion, and you need a book, a sacred text. And I do hope, I'm not a religious scholar by no means, but I do hope that there are people out there who will try to come up with something that ties into the European psyche and European peoples. What do you think of that?
Okay, so yeah, to sum up then, I came to this criticism of Christianity and this reevaluation of Christianity through nationalism. And I would like Christians to honestly listen to what I'm saying from a nationalist perspective. Christianity is a universal religion. It is for all people. The reason why not just Catholic hierarchy and Catholic organizations and Protestant churches and all the connected NGOs are so interested in immigration or missionary work, it's because they believe in the brotherhood of the children of God. They believe in converting and in saving all the souls possible and bringing the word of God to every ear on earth. And that is why you have conservatives and Christians who say, you know, I don't see race, I just see character. And you have Christians who say, hey, you know, let's let in the Hispanic immigrants because at least they're Catholics, or let's let in the sub-Saharan Africans because at least they're Christians. If they're better than the Muslims. And then you'll have other Christians who are saying, no, let's ally ourselves with the Muslims and stop fighting. The Jews are trying to divide us. But we actually have a lot more in common. And we both believe that Christ will rule from Jerusalem in his second coming. The Muslims believe that, and they believe that also he was a great prophet. We have more in common. Let's ally with the Muslims. And they're a traditional people too. And so we're constantly looking to someone else to save us. We're looking to someone else to be strong for us instead of being strong ourselves. Or we are constantly looking to improve the lot of others instead of looking after our own. Christianity is globalism, but with prettier interior decorations. There are Christians who oppose or say they oppose globalism, say they oppose mass immigration, but when it comes down to it, if the migrants are Christian, they're actually for it. And if the one world religion is Christianity, they are for a one world religion. And if the one world, new world order, the universal governance is coming out of Jerusalem and it's Christian governance, they are for it. This is what their end times prophecy foretells anyway. It's what they look forward to. It's what they believe is going to happen. So without telling me that because I don't believe this or support this, I will end up in hell, I would like Christians to actually listen to what I'm saying and respond with their counters to this. If I don't want to live in a globalized world, in a multiracial society, but at least they're all Christians, if I don't want my race to be wiped out by mass immigration, but at least they're all Christians, if I don't want to live in a world where a universal law comes from Jerusalem, but at least it's based in Christianity, at least it's based on the words of the Messiah, what do you have to say in response to my objections? Other than, well, here's a meme of you in hell. Oh, but I was based, I was racist. Well, what else, what more could possibly matter? Right now, my race is on the brink. And your solution is the Bible. Your solution is, let's all convert to Christianity. And as every movement has become more Christian, it becomes more multiracial. Look at the Nick Fuentes America First movement, for example. The word Catholic means universal. So as a particularist myself, as an ethno-nationalist, as someone who believes not in, I am exclusive. I don't believe in inclusivity. I believe in exclusivity. How do you square then some sort of Catholic revivalism and a universal world religion based on Judaic prophecy, Judaic national foundational mythology? And we see this all the time, that this ecumenicalism is just gaining more ground. We see Jordan Peterson making his videos to Muslims and Jews and encouraging people of the book to unite. We see it from Alex Jones, Nick Fuentes, all these people trying to have this Christian revival and just not at all focusing on what's really going on right now and what's really important, which is the survival and prosperity of the European race, the European races, if you prefer. And before the Christians respond with, well, Christianity isn't a political movement, it's not a political ideology, you're trying to make you're asking for Christianity to mold to your political aims. When Christianity is a religion, it's about your soul, it's about the afterlife, it transcends earthly politics. I call bullshit on that because it is you people who are trying to make Christianity political. It's Nick Fuentes who has transformed himself and his movement into this Christian revivalist thing, this Catholic movement, particularly Catholic. It's Alex Jones who's giving speeches saying that, God has the victory, and we're going to bring this nation back to God. Jesus is king, Christ is king. It's you guys. And the Christians have been doing this. The whole history of the Catholic Church is also as a political institution. So don't give me this cope that I'm demanding that Christianity be a politically expedient earthly ideology. You do too. You want it to be that thing too. And it's been that thing already for a long time. So don't give me that. Answer me on the grounds of what I'm talking about. As a nationalist, who, as a racialist, eugenicist, a ethno-nationalist who wants the survival and prosperity of my kinfolk, how does Christianity help when it's doing all these things against those aims? From its hierarchy all the way down to what the average layman believes in his mind and his heart. And keep in mind that all of the e-crusaders, all the gripers who make their memes and attack pagans on the internet for some reason, as if pagans are the correct target, and have nothing to say about all the Christian Zionists or the complete subversion of their own churches. They're not saying anything about that. No, let's pick fights with racist pagans, with nationalist pagans. But also, just word to the wise, you are an extreme minority in your own faith. Most Christians are not anti-Semitic, just the opposite. They believe that the Jews are the chosen people. Most Christians are not racist. They believe that all are welcome as long as they are Christian. The more the merrier. I don't see race, I just see content of character. You gripers, you anti-Jewish Christians, you're an extreme minority. Neither the Christian hierarchy nor the vast majority of Christian layfolk think like you. And you think the way you do in spite of your Christianity, not because of it. So come to my battleground and address me on these claims without telling me that I'm going to hell. Come to my battleground and address me on the claims that I've made about the psychological and spiritual damage that imposing a foreign people's national mythology and morality on us for 1,000 years has done. That teaching us that our ancestors before the Red Sea pedestrians came over and brought us the knowledge of right and wrong were just running around through the forest naked and didn't know how to behave correctly. Address me on the battleground of my claims that we are worshiping, that Christians are worshiping in the Old Testament, a horrible deity, violent, genocidal, corrupt, wicked, selfish, jealous, volatile, who then becomes the God-man Yeshua ben David, the Mashiach. But that is the tribal hero for the Jews, who we've now taken as our savior, mistakenly, and who is prophesied to wipe out all the nations in some great final Jewish victory. That's what's in the Bible. That's what's prophesied. So address me on those claims. And as for solutions, paganism, you don't convert to it, you return to it. It's who you are, it's your blood and soil. So I, for example, I can't be a Norse pagan because I'm not Nordic, okay? And you couldn't be, you betwixt couldn't be a Norse pagan because you're Irish. It's ethnically based. It's what we had, what the Jews had, their own nationalistic, tribalistic, ethnic tradition, ethnic faith, with their own pantheon of deities, or in the case of the Jews, they settled on just having one fanatic, one God. Now, we are so far removed in many places and in many cases from our pre-Christian, ancestral, quote-unquote pagan faiths and traditions. In some parts of Europe, not so much, and in those Nordic places like the Scandinavian countries, they actually have maintained quite a great deal. Actually, in the day-to-day customs, in the holiday festivals and things like that, it's all paganism. It's all pagan with a Christian veneer. And that's actually how many Europeans lived Christianity for thousands of years. Like I said, this idea that that Europeans just converted instantly to Christianity. No. In fact, the word pagan refers to people who lived in the countryside and continued living in their ancestral ways, their traditional ways, without converting to the urban, new cult of Christianity. So, but in any event, a lot of it has been lost to time and lost to the destructive hands of Christians. So it's not easy to practice quote unquote paganism. If you are looking for sacred texts, it's not easy because they've all been destroyed for the most part. And also, Nordic and Germanic, Irish, the Druids in Ireland and all that, Celtic paganism wasn't based on sacred text. It was oral tradition. So there really isn't a sacred text anyway. Temples have been converted to churches. Like I said, statues have been torn down. People don't build shrines in their homes anymore to the old gods. And people probably don't understand anything about the old gods. We think, oh, Poseidon, he's the god of the sea, right? And that's actually not really correct. To just limit Poseidon to being the god of the sea, like he just makes waves and stuff. No, that's actually not really correct, but we don't know anymore. That information is lost to us. So what do we do? A lot of paganism is kind of academic. It's like there isn't any. It's not practiced. It's just sort of reconstructed and debated over, and people kind of have like Wikipedia entries on Greco-Roman paganism or Germanic paganism, but how do you actually practice this stuff? And is that the solution, to go back to what we were before Christianity? Or should we go forward into something different? I don't really know. I'm piecing that together myself. But as a foundation, you can't really go wrong with trying to do honor to your ancestors and caring about your progeny and living on. It wasn't Christianity that made me want to have kids. It's being a nationalist, it's being an ethno-nationalist that's made me want to pass on my European genes, and so that my kin continues to exist, and that I do honor to my ancestors who made me exist. And I include my Christian ancestors in that. But as you said earlier, Betwixt, the majority of our ancestors weren't Christian. We've been Christian for a long time in the West, but not really a long time in the grand scheme of things. And in some parts of Europe, like the Scandinavian countries, like the Baltic countries, going into Latvia and Estonia and those places, they were fully Christianized in like the late 15th century. So it's really only been a question of centuries for them. And so the majority of our ancestors were not Christian. It's difficult to do honor to them in an age where people don't even know that much about their great-grandparents. And many of our ancestors, our grandparents, our great-grandparents probably didn't do many great deeds. But just the mindset of doing honor to those that came before you and doing honor to those that are going to come after you. That's a pretty good foundation. It's a pretty good way to live by. And all the rest, you don't need Christianity. You don't need the Bible, which is actually full of immoral things, to teach you right from wrong. And the European peoples have a long history of philosophy that goes back well before Christianity, that is concerned with the right way to live, the right way to behave. It's all out there. It's all there. You mentioned like sacred texts and things like that, or people who are working on sort of creating a sacred text or some guidelines. That is out there. Colin Cleary Summoning the Old Gods, that's a book that people could check out. Nietzsche, to throw a pretty, stereotypical name. But just familiarize yourself with what the Greco-Romans believed, familiarize yourself with what the Germanic peoples believed before they were Christianized. How did they organize their society? What did they live by? What was important to them? And I think you'll find yourself on pretty good footing. As far as your soul and the afterlife and your personal relationship with God, you might have a more difficult time with those questions, but no one said this was going to be easy. Escaping from a matrix that was imposed on us, escaping from a moral framework that was imposed on us at the expense of our racial memory and our own way of looking at things before someone else imposed their way of looking at things. This is not going to be easy to escape from. It's not going to be easy to get out of and reconstruct our own methods. But I think it has to be done. Otherwise, we're just going to continue on this path where we're living in liberal progressivism, which is the bastard child of Christianity.
Yeah, if there is a new text, European sacred book, I hope it mentions our lakes, our mountains, our meadows, but I hope it doesn't mention the desert, and I especially hope it doesn't mention the Dead Sea. Tongue-in-cheek solution. We talk about solutions. This is a tongue-in-cheek solution for people who, may have built up a number of sins. This is much cheaper. So if you're hard up for cash, this is much cheaper than forking out for an indulgence. Go at nighttime to a farm. Go at nighttime because that's when the farmer's asleep. Sneak into the hen house, grab yourself a chicken, and beat the living shit out of the chicken. And I'll tell you something, your soul will be as clean as the driven snow. So there you go. Right. Listen, Pox, thanks very much for coming on. I will put links for Pox's Substack. He had a very good essay there. What was it? The pint glass half empty, was it, Pox?
Oh, yeah, that's the one I just wrote. Yeah, the pint glass half empty.
Half empty, yeah. Very good essay about his trip to Ireland and how things are changing. So I will put a link to his Substack and also his Twitter. Pox
On the Substack, there's
on.
also, so like I said at the start, this is the first time I've really talked about Christianity on a stream with anyone. I don't really do this. I occasionally will post about it, or I might respond to someone who's posting something related to Christianity, or, attacking European pre-Christians as being dumb or whatever. But really, I don't have much material on this. What I did write, though, and I kind of just figured this is it. I don't need to really say anything else. I've said it all. It's on my Substack. It's an essay called On the Religious Sideshow Taking Over Nationalism. And I basically lay out many of the criticisms I've done today. And again, I challenge Christians to respond to these criticisms. And it's all in that essay, so people can check that out as well.
All right. Pox, thanks for coming on, and we'll be in touch again soon.
All right. Thanks for having me on.